Our timeline on this Monday afternoon, the Jaguars have fired offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. Head coach Doug Marrone says, I have to do what I think is best for this football team. The Chargers announced that running back Melvin Gordon did indeed suffer an MCL sprain in his right knee on Sunday. His status apparently evaluated week to week. Hello there. We're glad to have you with us as we begin the post-Thanksgiving portion of the NFL season. Tim Hasselbeck, Ryan Clark, Adam Schefter. I'm Wendy Nix. We will start with what happened over the weekend. And what a day it was for Phillip Rivers, who completed 28 and 29 passes, including 25 in a row. His 96.6 completion rate, the highest single-game rate in NFL history. Tom Brady had a pair of touchdown passes in a win over the Jets after he had thrown just one in his 3 prior games. With Pittsburgh losing, New England takes over the number 2 seed in the AFC. Cleveland took down Cincinnati behind 4 touchdown passes from number 1 pick Baker Mayfield. The Browns end their 25-game road losing streak, which was just 1 game shy of the league record. And the Seahawks won their second straight by exactly 3 points since 2015. Seattle has played an NFL-high 19 games where the final score margin has been by 3 points or fewer. And then there's the Packers, whose playoff hopes took a hit with a loss to the Vikings. Green Bay has now lost 8 straight on the road, their longest streak since losing 9 in a row on the road in 1978 and 79. So it's there. We'll pick up Overreaction Monday, and here's what we'll start with. Aaron Rodgers done after just 1 Super Bowl. Adam Schefter, overreaction or no?
Wendy, he just signed a 5-year extension. He's 34, 35 years old. The Packers didn't 8 straight road games, which is the longest road losing streak since 1978 and 79 when David Whitehurst, or Charlie White, David Whitehurst was the Packers quarterback. That tells you how long it's been since this team has lost so many games in a row on the road. But to think that Aaron Rodgers never is going to win a Super Bowl, that might be, but that's hard for me to imagine.
Well, this is an overreaction for me, and the reason that you think this team is disappointing, Adam, is because they have Aaron Rodgers. And when you have Aaron Rodgers, you think it doesn't matter who else is around you. It doesn't matter that you're decimated in the secondary or that you don't have a lot of weapons on the outside or can't generate a run game, because we think you have Aaron Rodgers. You shouldn't lose games like this with someone that talented. Do you know who won the Super Bowl the year before Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers? It was the New Orleans Saints. And it was Drew Brees, and they went through a slump in a time in his career where that team wasn't playing at a high level. And look at the New Orleans Saints now, and look at what age Drew Brees is doing and maybe playing his best ball. So to say that Aaron Rodgers won't continue to be one of the top quarterbacks and that this team can't turn it around and get back to the
overreaction for me
Clean
as well.
sweep here.
I mean, so much can change in 5 years. Like, if we were to go back and look at the 2013 season,
right,
and like which teams were good and who was,
it's a big difference.
Yeah, so that's longer than the average career span. Maybe playing with a running back or a tight end that we've never heard of before. I think that so much can change within a single season. 2 years, 3 years for sure. 5 years is an eternity in the NFL.
There was a day when we declared Tom Brady's career slowing down or almost over, and we see how that worked out. I will ask you this, though. Is it realistic to think the Packers will make the playoffs at this point? It's a long shot at best.
They can do it. It's going to be tough. They're going to have to play flawless football. And you don't lose all your road games in a year. They're 0-6 on the road this year. And, that's hard to bounce back from.
And they have winnable games down the stretch. You actually have to go to the Bears and play there. And obviously that's the team you're chasing. So you're wondering, can you catch a Carolina Panthers team? Can you catch a Seattle Seahawks team? Or even whoever falls out of the NFC East? I just think it's going to be very difficult with the way this team is playing right now to play themselves into the playoffs.
You factor in some injuries that we saw last night along that offensive line. Don't know the severity of those. But if they're banged up all along that offensive line, then no, they won't.
Right.
Well, let's take a look at the NFC playoff picture. The Saints and Rams, of course, both in very good position at 10-1. The Bears are at the top of the North, and the Cowboys lead the East. Minnesota and Washington hold the wild card spots right now, but that race could heat up down the stretch. The Seahawks and Panthers on the outside looking in, but they're both 6-5. Philly 5-6, but have a very difficult schedule the rest of the way. So here's where we will continue with Overreaction Monday. Regardless of what the playoff picture ultimately looks like, New Orleans is in the Super Bowl, Ryan Clark.
I think this is an overreaction, but when you watch them play football right now, it's hard not to think that this is the team to beat. The way the New Orleans Saints are playing on both sides of the ball, the efficiency in which Drew Brees is playing with, and the way that Sean Payton is calling plays, manipulating the game, getting the best matchups for this very talented offense, it's hard to see a team beating them. But when you look at the Los Angeles Rams and the chance that they have to host the NFC Championship, I think that is where this could get sketchy. You also look at having to play the Chicago Bears, who's a team that has a great defense. If the Rams can get the NFC Championship versus the Saints to not be in New Orleans, and I'm not saying that the Saints can't go to Los Angeles and win. I don't think that's a great home field advantage. I'm just saying that if you have to go into New Orleans and try to beat that team, it is almost impossible in that environment to win that game. The Rams have an opportunity down the stretch to continue winning, to have a game with the Bears in primetime, to continue winning and host playoff games. I think that's the best chance for the NFC.
Yeah, their path is better, certainly, going through New Orleans. But it's an overreaction for me just because I think there are really good teams in the NFC. I mean, look, I think the Bears, because their defense can be so dominant, I think that's a tough team. I think the Minnesota Vikings are a really good, balanced football team. I think when you look at the Rams, they obviously have as much firepower as anyone. And so, I just think is tough. It's just one of those years. It's a bad year to be one of the best teams in the NFC.
Do you think the NFC, the NFC's top teams are better than the AFC, or do you think it's a tougher road on the AFC side?
No, I think the NFC, on a whole, I believe the NFC teams are the tough. I mean, listen, when you go to the top three teams in the AFC, you're going to say are Kansas City, New England, and Pittsburgh, maybe. I mean, give me, the Saints, the Rams, the Vikings over those teams.
To me, we're going to make it a clean sweep again, not an overreaction. It says the Saints will be in the Super Bowl. They might be in the Super Bowl. They might be. They are the best team in football right now. But say they will be. That they're going to beat out the Rams. I mean, look at the chances to reach the Super Bowl. Yeah, it's 49%. Okay, 49 is a long way from 100, though, and that's what we're saying. That they will be in the Super Bowl. 49 means they have a good chance to reach the Super Bowl. If they play the way they have, I think they will be in the Super Bowl. But again, that's a lot of football that's left. Some good teams are in their way. These playoff games, they get going. Strange things happen.
Anything can happen. It was Aaron Rodgers, in fact, who said, we just got to get in. As difficult as that road is. Once you get in, you know what? All bets are off. We've seen some crazy things happen. That was the NFC. Here's how things are shaping up in the AFC. The Chiefs were on a bye last week, but still sit atop at 9-2. The Patriots win means they are the 2 seed, and because of the Steelers losing to Denver and Houston leads the South. As it stands, the Chargers and the Ravens hold the AFC's 2 wildcard spots. This is not the same kind of Patriots team we've seen, but that does not mean you should count them out. Here's what we'll say on Overreaction Monday. The Patriots' run game shaping up to be more important than Rob Gronkowski. Adam Schefter, is that an overreaction?
I don't think it's an overreaction because they went into play the Jets yesterday, and the one thing that this team wanted to do was get its run game going, and it did. And if Sony Michel is running the football that way, and Rex Burkhead comes back and he's running the football, and James White is coming out of the backfield, well, they've been playing without Gronkowski for a lot of the time. And when it gets cold in December and January, they want to run the football effectively. So I don't think it's an overreaction. It's not an overreaction to say that the Patriots' run game is more important. Gronk is great, but the Patriots this year are, when they're throwing passes to Gronk in the red zone, they've completed one of those 10 passes. They're still 8-3, so they've been able to win games without Gronk producing. If Gronk can produce, they'll be that much better off, but the run game is more important.
I'm going to have to go with that's an overreaction. And the reason is the type of attention that Rob Gronkowski attracts. When you look at this game yesterday, Jamal Adams, who is probably the best extra defender that the New York Jets have, was on Gronkowski a ton in man-to-man. So now that gives opportunities for Julian Edelman. That also gives you an opportunity to run the football because he is attracting so much attention. By the way, he's a great blocker. There was a stat on SportsCenter this morning and it's talking about QBR. And with Gronkowski, his QBR, Tom Brady's QBR is Drew Brees. Without him, it's Andy Dalton. So when you tell me that and you say, what's important? If I can be Drew Brees with and I'm Andy Dalton without, no disrespect to him, I think I want Rob Gronkowski on the field.
Well, there is a considerable difference. That's a fair point.
Yeah, it's an overreaction for me. Listen, Gronk changes everything. He absolutely changes everything in terms of how you have to defend him, because he's too big for secondary players when they isolate him, and he's too fast and too long for linebackers that aren't used to playing in space. And quite honestly, their run game benefits significantly. You alluded to this, Ryan. Not only when you remove Gronk from the formation and you take somebody with him, but he's just a tremendous inline blocker.
Yeah, absolutely.
They will move him. He'll lead on stuff. He's actually a good blocker on the perimeter for some of the perimeter screen stuff that they do. Rob Gronkowski, since he's been a Patriot, I believe has been the second most important member on their roster, and when he's able to go, they're a completely different team to face.
Well, they're certainly better off with Rob Gronkowski healthy and on the field. I don't think there's any debating that. Doug Marrone has made an announcement, and there will be a change. He says that it will be Cody Kessler who starts this week instead of, this is just for Ryan Clark, by the way, Blake Bortles. So they're making a change at quarterback, Ryan.
They should have did it in the offseason.
Go ahead.
Playoff contender, but to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, and you invested in took you so long. So now what you've done is you've wasted a year. You've gotten people fired, and Nathaniel Hackett, who's the offense coordinator, and now you go to Cody Kessler, who cannot be your long-term answer. This was botched in the offseason, and now you've made this thing last a lot longer than it needed to, and you have to move on from Blake Bortles now and go out and find you a quarterback. Can you do that and continue to keep this roster intact? This was botched from the beginning, and if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars and Tom Coughlin, you made a mistake.
Listen, there's been some changes today. If you missed it at the top of the show, they did choose to part ways with their offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett. So now wholesale changes, Adam.
Well, it's interesting because the Jaguars are already projected to be over the salary cap for next year. There's one of two teams that are in that position right now, and they're about $6 to $7 million over the cap. So they're going to have to make some moves to get under the cap. And clearly now, one of the moves will be to move on from Blake Bortles. Now, they've had other moves in mind, and it's not difficult to recapture that cap space. But again, this tells you that this team is going to be making a lot of changes during the season, during the offseason, and the number one change is going to be at the quarterback position. And I think we could start trying to figure out who's going to be Jacksonville's next quarterback. Who are the candidates? If the Giants move on from Eli Manning, would he want to go down and finish his career in Jacksonville? I don't know that he would.
Would they want him? Keenum, Kirk Cousins, Teddy Bridgewater, all of those guys were on the move last year. All of them. All of those quarterbacks were on the move and available. That's a lot of guys with, starting caliber play that were available that you could have had that you didn't get involved with. And so now your options, Adam, as you're saying, you're going to turn the page. Well, who are the candidates now?
Right.
Like who?
Those guys have teams.
It's a different landscape. There's no question.
You're not going to have the same,
And when you talk about when you hear that teams are already over the salary cap for next year, that means what they did was they pushed all their chips into the middle of the table. Right? They went out and acquired all the people they thought they needed to win a Super Bowl. And then you keep Blake Bortles, and even though you have all these pieces around him, or you think you have all these pieces around him, you don't have the most important piece. And honestly, the worst thing that happened to the Jaguars last year was getting to the AFC Championship, because it made them think they had enough. Yep. It made them think that they were just a couple of plays away from it. And then this happens, and now you're stuck having to retool and rebuild this thing.
We say winning cures all.